how do you even start a conversation about someone's meth use?
Typically, what you want to do is you kind of want to let them lead the relationship in pretty much all aspects, but in particular, when discussing anything around risky behavior, sexual activity, substance use. Actually, I just found out recently that we are offering sharps, clean sharps to our clients out in the streets. I just found this out today, actually. This is a huge step for me in this exact question, because this can open up the door to this conversation a lot quicker than you normally would have one. But typically, I just kind of let them, lead the pace.
So what if you see that their meth use is really affecting their ability to sort of move forward with any goals or with getting housing, and you feel like as a staff person that you feel kind of stuck, right? Because you can't really do much with them. Um, and they're not going to bring up this in a conversation. How might you bring it up?
Well, I would point out whatever it was that happened, like if they missed an appointment, I would point that out and point out the pattern that I'm seeing and talk about what we can do to mitigate that without bringing up the drugs. I would start by talking about that, and then we would have a conversation about strategies around that. And then eventually I would kind of lead into that, that realm by externalizing it. That's the key here. You have to externalize it. Like it's almost like another person. So kind of like if we were talking, you and I, it would be like, hey, so what are we going to do about John over there? And you literally want to talk about it in those terms because it makes it easier for them to feel like they're free to talk about it in a way that's safer for them.
Can I ask you to kind of clarify that a little bit? So are you saying that you would say you're working with Chase and you think he's using, would you say something like, I have another client who I think is using meth, what would you recommend? Or are you saying like, have them talk about it in the third person?
Have them talk about it almost in the third person. I mean, you don't have to be rigid about that, but just kind of letting them know that you're talking about the meth almost like it's not connected to them at all. Like, almost like something that's broken in the corner. You're like, what are we going to do about this over here? We have, this is standing in the way of our housing appointments. So what can we do to try to, not say that that's not there, that can't be there, but what can we do to try to live with that in a way that we can still make our appointments, and just kind of keep it at that level if that's making sense to you.
So as opposed to saying like, what are we going to do about your meth addiction? Just say like, so meth use seems to be sometimes a thing that gets in the way of getting things done. Something like that?
Yeah, maybe, or just talking about maybe introducing it in the idea of, I noticed that when you've ingested this, it seems like you're less able to answer the questions that the housing authority is asking you or whatever it is. And I'm wondering if maybe we can take care of that after the meeting. After we do the meeting, do that, I'll even give you some new sharps or whatever, just baby steps in mitigation and keeping it external. So you don't, because all their life they've heard, you. So the problem to them is them. And you have to separate the two in order to get anywhere, in my experience.
Right. And so I think like this is a different thing that I'm hearing, a different type of strategy than you'd use with somebody who is dependent on alcohol for appointments, where it's like, you're kind of like, hey, do you need to get well before this appointment? Is there anything you need to take care of before we go into this 2-hour-long appointment? This is more like, hey, do you think maybe you can hold off, do something different? Maybe we have some coffee before this appointment and like you can take care of yourself later. Something like that. Those types of strategies. Yeah. Thanks.
Right. And I like your point, Sean, about addressing the behavior, right? The missed appointment versus, oh, your drug use is interfering with this, but more like, hey, you missed the appointment. Let's take a look at that, right? So.
Yeah, because the minute you start doing that, then you shut everything down. And when you shut everything down, you miss an opportunity potentially in the future to be really helpful. And I would hate to miss that opportunity.
Piggyback on what Sean just said, I think it's important to nearly right off the bat, if the person is able to really communicate with you, to facilitate some kind of dialogue that is, hey, listen, nobody's in trouble. I'm not your PO. I don't manage a sober living. But yo, listen, like when you're high on meth, it's hard to fill out this application. So we need to kind of address that. So right off the bat, nobody's in trouble, right? You're not getting written up. You're not going back to Twin Towers, right? You're good, but it becomes challenging to work when this happens. So how can we, to Sean's point, how can we mitigate getting you, enrolled for interim housing, right? And then I like to set a precedent that nobody's in trouble and then kind of speak very matter-of-factly about it.
To view the full discussion, visit the Harm Reduction SharePoint page and the Learning Department's Harm Reduction playlist on YouTube.